Do you know somebody with autism? Autism is much, much more common than most people think. About 1 in 100 people have autism. That's more than 700,000 in the UK alone. So chances are that someone you know, or work with, or love has the condition. What is autism? Autism is a lifelong developmental disability that affects how we communicate with and relate to others. And it affects how we make sense of the world around us. Lots of things that people take for granted, like body language and metaphors, can be confusing and alienating for us. Autism is a spectrum condition, so that whilst we all share certain difficulties, our autism will affect us in different ways. Some of us have been to university and hold down jobs, whilst others need a lifetime of specialist support. Asperger's syndrome is a form of autism. People with Asperger's syndrome are often of average or above average intelligence. They have fewer problems with speech, but may still have difficulties with understanding and processing language. What is autism like? For us, the world can be a confusing mass of people, events, and places. Sometimes we struggle to make sense of the world, and this can make us anxious. Every person with autism is different. That's what makes it so difficult to understand. But some of the characteristics that we have include a love of routines, sensory issues such as noises or smells or light, and having special interests. Some of us experience difficulties in understanding and relating to other people, and having a social life can be that much harder for us. For some of us, for example, going to a party can be really hard because we don't know what's going to happen or who will be there, and it often gets too noisy, which can be upsetting. Other people with autism have trouble reading facial expressions, understanding jokes or sarcasm, or common phrases like break a leg. Even phrases people use every day like it's cool can be disorientating. You think they're asking you to turn the air conditioning off. Many people with autism don't look disabled. Parents of children with autism often say that people simply think their child is naughty, while we adults find that we are misunderstood. That is why it is called a hidden disability. What causes autism? The exact cause of autism is still being investigated, but research suggests that a combination of factors, genetic and environmental, may account for changes in brain development. Autism is not caused by a person's upbringing or their social circumstances. Is there a cure? There is no cure for autism, but there are interventions that enable learning and development which may be helpful. You can find out more by going to www.autism.org.uk/approaches. Diagnosis. If you or someone you know thinks they have autism, they can contact their GP, who can refer them to a specialist for diagnosis. So how can you help? There are many good people doing good work for autism up and down the country, but we need the support of the wider community. Together we can break down barriers. Together we can ensure that autism, which is far more common than other conditions that get far more attention, remains on the agenda. We hope that you will join us in helping more people with autism lead the life they choose. If you want to learn more about autism, go to www.autism.org.uk or click here. You can receive continuous news and information about autism by becoming a member of the National Autistic Society. As a member, you will receive Your Autism magazine quarterly, which includes news about autism, stories from people living with autism, practical tips, and much more. You will also receive regular e-newsletters, an autism alert card, and exclusive voting rights which help influence how the National Autistic Society, the leading UK charity for people with autism, can continue to help people with autism.
Hello, we have with us Dr. Prathibha Karanth, who has done her PhD in speech pathology, and also she is the director of the ComDeal Trust. Let us welcome her to the show. Hello, ma'am. I would like to know, what are you specialized in?
I'm a speech pathologist by training, but within that my area of interest has been communication disorders which are a result of the brain involvement.
Okay. Can you tell us what exactly does autism mean?
Yeah, autism as a word means self-centeredness, but it is now being used to refer to a disorder in children where the children are said to be self-centered. That is, children who are born typically look healthy and start growing seemingly normally, but around 1.5 to 2 years of age, you start seeing that these children withdraw from social contact, do not want to interact with others, If they've learnt a few words, they stop using it. They get preoccupied, by themselves, either with a toy or with parts of their body, repetitive movements and things like that. So the term now has been broadened to use, autism spectrum disorders, which covers a range of these children who have this particular developmental disability.
How common or prevalent is autism?
In the 1960s, when they first described this condition, it used to be considered as a very rare disorder, 1 in 10,000. Now we are talking about 1 in 88.
Okay.
Yes.
So that's a huge difference.
A steep rise in the 1990s and 2000 onwards. Yes.
What is the major cause of this?
We don't really know. We now believe that this is a biological disorder, not a behavioral problem. And so obviously there is something in the body of the child. It is biological, possibly exacerbated by environmental conditions. Okay. Stresses of modern life, possibly, yeah.
Okay, so is it a birth defect, or is it due to the environmental issues, or is it does the environmental status triggers it?
The underlying basis is there at birth, okay, but it doesn't manifest itself. As a child grows, you see the characteristics. I believe that there is a genetic vulnerability in the child, and perhaps the environmental factors exacerbate it, and a vulnerable child ends up having the full-blown characteristics.
Is there any chromosome or gene which plays an important role in this?
There's been a lot of genetic research in the last 10 years or so. A lot of money is being poured into these areas. There is some evidence. There is some evidence even otherwise the incidence of children in families is higher. If you are autistic, the chances that you'll have a sibling who's also autistic is higher. Autism is higher in identical twins. So there's some evidence to indicate that there is a genetic basis. The research work that's going on has identified a few hundred genes, not any one gene, that seem to interact together to end up with this thing. So there's not a single gene, but yes, it is believed, increasingly believed, that there is a genetic basis to it.
Does a pregnant woman's lifestyle cause any effect that the child becomes autist?
Not that I know of. There has been no connection. Instead, there's been a connection in terms of vaccines. There's been a big debate about, controversy about whether vaccines trigger these symptoms. There is no scientific evidence, though there are still people who strongly cling to this idea. There have been a lot of studies done, and scientifically it's not been proven. Okay, and the flip side of it is, unfortunately, because of that, a lot of people are not vaccinating their children, and then you end up with these high numbers of measles, things that we thought were out, okay, are now back because of it.
What is the basic difference between mental retardation and autism?
Mental retardation is a condition that you generally see from birth itself, okay? And the child who is mentally retarded is slow in several areas, okay? It's not any one specific area. He is generally slow in development, and the condition doesn't fluctuate up and down, okay? If the child is slow, he is slow. In autism, it's not like that. In fact, autism, the condition is so varied among children. Initially, when you look at the young child, you don't realize that there is anything wrong at all. Then you see all of these oddities, and if you don't help the child, those oddities become worse. Okay, and then it stands out. Even their motor, appearance seems odd. Their gait seems odd. So the two conditions are very different. And in autism, there are skilled children with autism. There are some very skilled children with autism. Okay, whereas that doesn't happen in mental retardation at all.
How early can a parent identify or detect that his or her child is having autism?
See, the diagnosis of autism is made only around 3 years, but there are many young women who've recognized that there's something strange about their child. They've sought medical help. In fact, a lot of physicians have said there's nothing wrong, it's just your imagination. And increasingly, scientists are designing tools to pick up the children younger. So we now have screening tools which pick up children who are at risk for autism. Okay. In our own clinic, when we started about 10, 12 years ago, the average age of the child would be 4, 4.5. We are now picking up children who are around 2, who are at risk for autism.
Okay. And also, ma'am, how can a parent do something about this?
See, I would say for any parent, if you think that there is something wrong, if it worries you, go to a good pediatrician, go to a good developmental psychologist, rule out that there is anything wrong. Okay, it's much better to be safe than sorry. So one can identify certainly by 1.5, 2 years. The young women are very smart. They know that there is something quite not right. Okay, it's another issue of acknowledging it, accepting it, and seeking help. Okay, but generally mothers pick it up, that there is something strange. And my sincere advice to parents would be, you lose nothing by having a screening. Okay, but if you postpone it, the condition becomes more complex and it's more difficult to help the child as he gets older.
How can a parent differentiate quirky, hyperactive, hypoactive, or naughty boy or girl?
Yeah, when you put it like that, it's very difficult, okay, but particularly if a child was doing certain things, okay, and then stops doing it, okay, or does it in certain circumstances, when he's very comfortable, very relaxed, okay, no attention on him if he's doing it, but when it's demanded of him, he can't do it, or if the social situation seems to affect him, and the more you demand, the more difficult it becomes for him. These issues I think are important, okay. And when a child withdraws, even the touch you can make out, okay. A mother holding a child who automatically responds as against somebody who stiffens, those are the little signs that help a mother pick up.
Are there any neurophysiological markers identified?
Not as of now. There's a lot of research going on in terms of fMRI studies of what's going on in the brain and things like that, but no clear biological markers as yet.
Can autism be fully corrected?
I'm glad you used the word corrected rather than cured, because a lot of people say, is there a cure? We don't know the cause. If you don't know the cause, there is no cure. Even corrected, I would say reservation. I would turn it around and say, can a child with autism be helped to lead a normal life? Yes, okay, and a very strong yes, provided you identify it early, give him the right kind of support. Okay, and the support may be needed over a period of time. Then he can lead a normal life like all of us, okay, with some support, albeit.
Okay, you said support. What are the basic support or training you will be giving to the?
Yeah, see, earlier when it was considered as a behavioral problem, it was really behavioral training. Now increasingly we understand that it's a neurodevelopmental disorder. We know that the child is not withdrawing, not because he doesn't want to interact, but because he has difficulty in interacting. Okay, that's a completely different way of looking at it. And why does he have this difficulty in interacting? Because he has, his reaction to a lot of the sensory inputs from the world is different from a typical child. Okay, and he has difficulty coping with. His control over his body also, the motor movements, when you want to do it voluntarily, are difficult. So when he's asked to do something, he cannot do it. Okay, so those are issues that really trouble the child. So we are now looking at neurodevelopmental frameworks, okay, helping the child identify what is the issue with this child. So it can be sensory issues, it can be motor issues, it can be communication issues, it can be social emotional. It's a range of things that we do depending on what is each child's need. That's what we do.
And what do you think? What is the role of society in this and how they react?
I think society's role is, one is, this is broader picture of developmental disabilities itself, is to say that it is not the parents' problem, it is not the parents who have created this problem, it is a problem with the child, which means it's a problem of society. That child is a part of the society. So our responsibility is to identify that the child has a problem, provide support to the family and to the child. Okay, because we end up blaming the family. Families are so much in denial, okay, because of the disapproval of the society. So accepting, if a child is born with a difficulty, nobody is to be blamed for it. So accepting that it is a problem, okay, and it needs to be helped, and accepting both the child and the family. I think that's the biggest thing that the society can do.
Okay. And in your point of view, what role can a media play in bringing awareness about autism to the common public?
Early identification, crucial, extremely crucial. The one thing that has emerged in research over the last 10-20 years is, given that we don't understand this condition, that if you provide early, good quality intensive intervention, that has the big long-term impact, the best long-term impact for children. So which means that we have to identify early, we have to provide that support. It's very intensive in nature. And when we say support, for the child as well as for the parents. Okay, because even for the parents it's very tough. So that role society certainly, and it's the acceptance. See, so many people go into denial and hide, and the condition becomes worse. So acceptance is important. It's our problem, not just the parents' problem.
It's a whole society.
Exactly, yeah.
What is the best educational program that you can give an autistic child?
I don't think there's any one, the best educational program. I think what we need to do is, as a young child, we need to see what are the developmental issues that are there that prevent him from, being like other children of his age, provide support for that. Educationally, it begins with acceptance. Okay, this child has his pluses and his minuses. So while we enhance the pluses, we also try to make the environment a little more supportive in terms of his difficulties. Say for instance, if a child has a sensory issue, okay, he can't like us sit in a classroom continuously for 8 hours. So you give him a break. Every half an hour he goes, he has a quiet break, 5 minutes, he comes back. Okay, that's a little thing that we can do. And then maybe, he sits in the class for another half an hour, no issue. But then when he needs that break, he should be given that break. So little things like that can help him. And a lot of these children seem to have strengths. Okay, visually some of them are very strong. So they are great artists, some of them are good at music. Find the thing that he is good at. More than anything else, that child deserves a childhood like anybody else. Okay, he has to be in a school like anybody else. We support him through those years, give him a childhood, and then by that time, whatever he is good in, if he has self-help skills, whatever he is good in, he finds a career, becomes self-reliant on the basis of that. That should be our aim.
So what is the basic role of a teacher? What should a teacher do when he or she is having an autistic child in her class?
See, knowing that child very well, knowing what triggers the negative behavior, what helps him to become calm and do things, that is very important. And then being flexible enough to give him that leeway to do it. That's the best thing a teacher can do. I must congratulate you on your initiative to sharing this information with the public at large, because we need to know these things. We need to be able to identify children, we need to be able to provide help, and most of all, we need to be able to accept children as our children, whether with autism or not. I congratulate you on your effort and I wish you good luck.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you for spending your valuable time with us.
Thank you. Thank you.